I think the first speaker, Enric from everis, is going to, who is also working for the Publications Office, who is now maintaining the vocabulary. He's going to start with an introduction about the history of the vocabulary and its development and where we stand today. And with that, I hand right over to Enric.
This is our index. This presentation is being shared between me, myself, and Nathalie Miric, who is dealing with part 2. Part 1 is about this history and how the core criterion and core evidence vocabulary is structured, and one brief example of how it is used. Second part is for Nathalie, who will explain how is it used in the SPD and in the procurement ontology. So let's start with part 1, which is a brief history of how this went. We started around 2015 with the development of E30s. This was mandated to DG Growth, this development, but it's a project that was supported by the ISA program. And for this, we had to develop a vocabulary to model criteria. This is why in E30s we have this 2 at the end, because the first version of E30s was based on documents. This new version, what it intends to do in E30s is to manage criteria and map these criteria to the documents, to the evidences where these documents are referred to. So later on, the same model was used for the development of the SPD. So we came up with a model that was practically common for both E30s 2 and the SPD. And the evolution of the core criterion and core evidence vocabulary was made more in the SPD than in E30s from that point on. So as you can see, we have been developing since 2015 different versions, and right now we have a kind of version 2. Whatever, 01 or 1.0, I can't remember, but yeah, 2.1 is the latest one. And the critical point between the beginnings of this model that was shared in E30s and the SPD, with E30s and the SPD, was when at some point we decided that this core criterion should be standardized internationally. So we proposed UBL to take over this core criterion and evidence, core criterion and core evidence vocabulary, and to introduce, to adopt those vocabularies into the UBL version 2.2. So this model didn't exist in UBL 2.1. It starts being used in UBL 2.2, and its main use is for the SPD, for the exchange of ESPD documents between the different actors in e-procurement. So the very first use for these vocabularies is for e-procurement. By the way, all this is also has a legal support in the case of e-procurement, which is Directive 2014/24. Both E30s and the SPD are reflected in that directive, are mentioned in that directive. E30s is Article 61 and the SPD is Article 59. One of the important things that is needed to be mentioned is that E30s plays a very important role in relation to these criteria for e-procurement, as the member states, according to the law, have the legal obligation of maintaining these criteria in e-certis. It is important because then you have a unique source of criteria that is legal and that is the authoritative criteria that have to be used by any public administration that is trying to use these criteria for e-procurement purposes. This idea is also important for future projects. If we can refer to that later on, we will insist on that concept. So, as you can see, we have a very latest iteration by the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. We came up with a latest version of the criteria and evidence vocabularies that was maintained until very recently by DG GROW. And currently this maintenance has been handed over to the Publications Office. So the current status, which is by now, and the objectives by end of 2020, would be that the core criterion and core evidence vocabulary is even optimized if possible. And the idea is to use it in a new version of e-certis 3, which is being approached, where the criteria, the core criterion and core evidence models would be used for any domain that is not necessarily procurement. So the idea is to build cross-domain registry of criteria in e-certis 3. It is possible that the ESPD has to be also the ESPD model has to be evolved, and this impacts also in how the core criterion and core evidence models could evolve. We foresee that the evolution of this is going to be very slight in the framework of the ESPD, probably null. But right now we are having other inputs from the new versions of UBL 2.3, which is in preparation, or the works that are being done in the e-procurement ontology, where this model is also used, or other projects like representation power and mandates, or even the once-only principle project, who is bringing on the table new requirements for this evolution. So right now we have a very stable, or so we think, version of the core criterion and core evidence vocabularies, but it is still evolving, and this evolution implies also simplification and for the core vocabulary, and also the introduction of new elements that are very few elements that are being detected in the works in other projects.
Enric,
Yes?
I know you have many more slides. You have 1 more minute, so maybe you speed it up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Just to have a look into what the vocabularies are. Here you have the main entity, which is Criterion. All right. For you to know that the Criterion has 2 main properties, which are information requirements here and constraints. The first one is to ask questions. The second one is to limit the response of that question. For instance, imposing a threshold on the question. And then each information requirement or constraint refers to a value, as you can see here. Also, the criterion is linked to the evidence. And by the way, as you can see, the evidence can be provided by a service provider and issued by a different source that is a service provider. A discussion that was recently brought up by TOP, by the way, it's here represented. And also very important, Criterion may refer to its legal basis. So as you can see, it's a very simple model, and also flexible. One important thing, and I will be done, is that Criterion may have sub-criteria, and this relation between a parent criterion and children sub-criterion can be categorized through a code. As you can see here, sub-criterion type code. So this allows to explicit that the relation is a relation of inheritance, or is a relation that is business-wise relevant. That will be explained later on also by Natalie Enric. Okay. So if you want to see one example of how this is being used, I recommend you to visit this URL. So there you can see how Representation Power and Mandate is proposing the use of criteria for the authorization of users that act on behalf of other legal or natural persons. I'm not going to read this. You can go there and visit it, but this is a very simple examples of the use of the core criterion and core evidence vocabularies. And I'm done. So
okay, thank you very much, Enric.